Aloha kekahiaka, everybody. Good morning. I komo mai. Thank you for joining our live show this morning. We are very excited to talk about a hot topic today, which is why does building in Hawaii cost more than the mainland? And we're going to get started here soon. We're just going to warm up our mics here. So we have Annie Howes and Rachel Conley, and then myself, Kelly Fuller, who will be the host today. And this is fun because we're all coming from Big Island today. So we're representing the Big Island. Annie, where are you located on the Big Island today?
So I live in Waimea, so that's kind of like in the middle of the Big Island. So it's a great location and very convenient, and it's very country here, and it's a beautiful place, nice and cool.
All right. So you're representing more of the North area. What about you, Rachel? Where are you at today?
I am south side in another rural area in Kauai. So I'm way down south in a little area called Ocean View.
Awesome. So we got the north, the south, and then I'm over here in Kona today. So I'm representing the west side. So we have full coverage all across Big Island. So that's really fun. Well, we are excited today. We are going to be talking about there's Rachel. Okay. So what we need to talk about is how much it costs to actually build in Hawaii in 2026. So if somebody told you that building a 2,000 square foot home could cost you 1.2 million all the way up to 1.8 million, would you believe it? So that's what we're going to dive into a little bit today, talking about island by island specifics and some of the hidden costs that you might not be considering when thinking about building over here in the Hawaiian Islands. Before we get into that, we do have a couple opportunities to connect. If you click the description below on our YouTube, we have a full guide where you can find more about the complete cost of building on the different islands. Great opportunity for more information. We also have the opportunity to book a consultation directly with our Living in Hawaii experts, and you'll get right on our calendar. Make sure that you want to connect with either Annie, Rachel, or myself, and we can make that happen. Another thing, important disclaimer here is that this content is for educational and entertainment purposes. We share our opinions and publicly available information, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy, and as well as when we film this live. So please conduct your own research. Reach out to us when you're ready to talk about your specific situation and what is best for your ohana, and we can verify any information, and we are not responsible for any actions of the outcome of this video. Just a disclaimer there. So let's get started. And again, I want to introduce, we have today our special guest. We have Annie Howes, who is coming from Waimea, and we have Rachel Conley down south in Ocean View, and then I am Kelly Fuller. I'm representing from Kona. All right, ladies, are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about building. So, Annie, kick us off. Why is building in Hawaii cost more than the mainland?
Well, I mean, first of all, the obvious. We live in Hawaii, and Hawaii is one of the most isolated places on Earth, and we're like 2,500 miles from the mainland. So everything gets shipped in. 90% of the product gets shipped in. So that really, really adds a lot of costs in building, So we don't have a lot of trees here. So a lot of the sticks, as we call them when you're building, gets brought in, like many of the materials. So that can add a high cost in building, definitely in Hawaii. And as you can see, typically it can cost between $350 a square foot, and for a luxury, it can start at $450 to $1,000 a square foot, because for luxury, it's custom. So they have a lot of high-end product that they can do, and the premium is where it's at, which is 20 to 40%. And there's always all these costs that becomes when you're building, it's added on that you don't foresee, so that can be an additional cost. Also, it can take a long time to build. Like if you're expecting you can put your house up in 2, 3 months, that's not going to happen. We've got general contractors. We only have limited amount of them, and they're busy and they're backed up sometimes in trying to build homes. So it can take a long time, maybe 6 months. And don't forget our county and how they work and the bureaucracy that we have to go through, the red tape in going to get permitting, the permitting process. So you've got to add that in. So it's no surprise when you have to build a house in 12 to 18 months. And remember, if you are building a house using a loan, they typically want you to build that house in 12 months because it's all paid through interest only. And then when your 12 months is done, then it's going to be out of pocket. So, you really have to be on it and have a project timeline and make sure your vendors show up on time. Everyone plays a key role to getting your building done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you brought up a great point there, is that time is money, right? And we have this thing on the Hawaiian Islands. We're on island time, Hawaii time, where you could find the challenge that your contractors, your workers may be a little bit more relaxed than what you're used to, right? And that's what Annie's alluding to with you may have a set time frame in which you want to build your property, but making sure that everybody is on the same page can be a challenge for yourself in the building process. And Rachel, have you had that? Have you heard of that with any of your clients?
Yes, absolutely. Especially during COVID, it was like very backed up in the building department to get your permits. So it's something I think that they've moved it along a little bit. I'm hearing more like 6 months. I do want to point out there are some packages you can get from local companies that are already kind of like fast permitted or pre-permitted that might be able to help you push that faster. So that's something that you can reach out and we can talk more about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So reasons, recapping why it is more expensive. Your price per square footage is going to be more than if you were to build a property on the mainland. It's going to depend too on the type of finishes that you want to put in your home. A lot of that is going to need to be shipped from overseas and shipped to the island, which is going to add a 20 to 40% premium. So what finishes you pick will play a large role in why it's going to cost more expensive. I think too, we kind of touched on it, but location, right? Hawaii is an island, and although the volcano is making more land day by day, it's not buildable, it's not livable. So we only have a limited amount of inventory for us to build on. And with that said, it's definitely going to add a cost to that, right? So those are going to be a couple things that are going to play in effect why building in Hawaii is going to cost more than anywhere in the US. All right, let's keep going here. So when we're talking about it, like, what are some numbers? Rachel, could you tell us what are some numbers that we're seeing? Again, this is public information. This could change based on exact location, contractors, right? Like there's so many different elements. But if you're thinking, we're talking broad here, what are some numbers that we could consider?
Sure. You can see our little slide here that kind of has the 4 main islands that people populate and build on here: Oahu, Maui, Big Island, and Kauai. And you'll see that Oahu is the most expensive with the urban permitting, the tight lots, the HOA restriction, compounding costs. And a modest 1,500 square foot home can hit up to $900K or 1.2 million in hard construction costs. I mean, that's pretty substantial. If you look over at Maui, you'll see, it's a bit cheaper there, $475 to $650, still above mainland, average. But the big wildfire in Lahaina has really tightened the contractor availability. They're really trying to clean up that area and pulling their resources there. It's a high demand for skilled labor is driving the costs higher than 2025 to 2026. And if you move over to Big Island, you see that we kind of have the lower end here of building costs. We have the rural areas. Kona and Kohala Coast luxury builds can match Oahu pricing, but the lava zone designations of 1 and 2 to 3 can make land cheaper, and insurance can be impossible. It's not nearly impossible, but it's pretty expensive, right?
Mhm.
And then looking over at Kauai, you see that it is bumping up, kind of matching Maui prices, 475 to 700 a square foot. Again, they're even more limited with contractor pool and remoteness. That's going to drive up the square footage price. Stringent, they can get hit more with the hurricanes, so their standards are a little bit stringent, and their height restrictions and add design material requirements that can inflate your budget on that island.
Yeah, that's great, Rachel. Thanks for breaking it down island by island specific. If you guys want more information on what your personal, what's best for your ohana, reach out to us and we can get you more exact numbers. Now, let's talk a little bit about some hidden cost. Now, this is some things that definitely, if you guys are tuning in from the mainland and you're not familiar with Hawaii real estate, how things work, that these are definitely going to be a surprise to you. And the first one being flood insurance. So flood insurance in Hawaii, it can be very dramatic depending on what the property is located. What it's based off of is FEMA flood maps. So we have flood maps for all across the Hawaiian Islands, and it's going to break down the different flood zones based on high risk versus low risk. There's also going to be some coastal flood hazard areas. And often when you are buying a property or getting a mortgage, getting a lender involved, there's going to be a flood insurance premium that will be added to that. And this can definitely depend on the elevation of the structure, the proximity to the ocean, the wave exposure, the historic flood risk. There's so many things that are factors to this. But one thing that's interesting and that we see often is that many buyers don't realize that two neighboring properties can be completely different when it comes to insurance. Speaking, because I'm here in Kona, properties on the Makai side, which is the ocean side of Ali'i Drive, are directly on the ocean, versus when you cross the street on the Mauka side, you're going to be over in a different area. And those are different, totally different areas. And it's only divided by a street. So that's something to consider. Even though it might look like they're neighbors, that could be different when it comes to your flood insurance policy and what that's going to cost you. So take note of that. And then Annie, what about, foundation, site preparation, utility connections? Like, what are some things that you need to look out for hidden costs there?
Kelly, I was wondering, could I add something about flood insurance?
Of course.
Yeah. So in 2019, they remapped like the whole island of the Big Island.
Mm-hmm.
So areas where you didn't think it was flooding is going to be flooded. Now, when I'm showing property and I have clients say, I want an oceanfront property, one of the things that they have to understand is when they're building, it has to be elevated. So there's so many other things that when you're getting flood insurance, there's requirements from that insurance company as well as building. So you can't just do a single level flat. Your house may be elevated if you're in the oceanfront and like in that area. And I think one of the hidden costs to talking about flood and building like an oceanfront is the ocean front of the island is considered SMA, which is a special management area. And a special management area, that's going to add costs because The county's not going to say, I'm going to just let you build wherever you want in an oceanfront property. They're going to say, we need to conduct and research what you're building. We want to see, and they're going to say you can only build 40 feet from the watermark. So that's going to add costs. And then just moving on, anybody that has any questions, you can let us know. I'll be able to help you answer. I've dealt with the SMAs in my past, and that's really time consuming, and also it costs money. Now, moving on to like site preparation. I just recently sold a land in Kohala Ranch. And right now, Kohala Ranch lands are going like fire sales because it's very complex to build there, and it's very hilly. So one of the hidden costs that was just a shocker was the site and foundation costs. I mean, what do you think it would cost to build something in Kohala Ranch? Where, Kelly, I'll let you answer.
For getting the foundation ready,
The foundation and site preparation, grading.
I'm gonna say 100,000.
I was going to say the same. I was going to say 100,000, but now I'm thinking maybe 200,000.
It can cost, be shocked, 200,000 to 500,000.
Wow.
Because what they don't understand is you're going to have to put rock walls. You're going to have to you're going to have to bring in fill. And sometimes that's 40, 50 truckloads of soil.
Wow.
And also, guess what? On our island that we have blue rock. And if you find blue rock on your property, it's the hardest rock to crack. And that can take time. And so now you're bringing in D9 and whatever truck that you require to crack that. And when you have a client that want to build their house at a specific area. And don't forget, one of the most hidden costs that people don't understand is HOAs. So HOAs, they have restrictions that you have to go through their guidelines, and they have their own architect, which will say, we don't want you to build the house here. We want you to build it here. So there's footprints of what's required with the HOA. And then you're going to have to take your plans, take it back to your architect. They're going to have to revise it, change it. And your architect can increase to like 50,000. So building a custom house at a particular area where you're going to get views, those are like part of the hidden costs. And when I was trying to get quotes for site preparation and foundation, it was very similar. It wasn't like I couldn't find a reasonable cost. And it's when I'm asking these guys on these quotes, they're saying, Annie, it's just fuel and the material, the equipment, and the manpower it takes to do that. So that's kind of what can happen when you don't like investigate and really find out about the lot that you're going to build on. And that's you need the expert, you need a realtor, and especially a realtor that sells in that area, like with Rachel. And I'm sure she, where she is, where it's affordable to build, what's the grading costs you think in?
So just for grading and site preparation for an acre, I think it really depends on the acre, right? What if there's ohia trees, if what needs to be graded, if it's just lava. So, we'll show out a variant. So I'd say like 10 to 30 grand, really depending on which is a lot less than Kohala Ranch area. So, but you have lava zone too. So your insurance is going to be significantly higher in that, in the area I'm at. So it's all things that you need to consider.
That's great. Hearing about, more of a luxury up north, what it's going to cost you in the 200,000 range approximately to get the site ready to build. Going down south where Rachel is in more ocean view, buying an acre, getting that site ready to build could be 10 to 20, 30,000, she said. So big difference. Really, of course, it's that location, location, location. I'm just thinking about the properties in Milili'i that are for sale that are on like a total slope
Mhm.
where you would have to bring in so much fill to get that property livable. So definitely a big hidden cost where if you're not familiar with what the volcanic rock is, the slopes, the elevation, the soil, it can really add up quickly. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I mean, and if you wanted to know, so at Kohala Ranch, it can cost you between 1.2 million to 1.8. So typically, I would, and the people that build there, they have a lot of money. They have slush funds for it, so they can really build it custom. But if I have a client that say, "Hey, Annie, if I want to move in 2 years," he's going to be he's not I'm not going to be able to sell that house for 2.5 million, because it's going to be abutting into the cost that he built that house. So
Mhm.
so that's something to really think about. And then if you ask me, well, can you build here? I absolutely. You there's so many different ways, like being an owner builder. That's another way you could build a house, and really finding the right lot, finding the right general contractor to work with, and you being the project manager and knowing how to build. That's a really smart way, and you can do it. I
Mhm.
built, I built 3 homes, and if you ask me, would you build again? I said yes. I would still do it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about utility connections, right? Because depending where you're at, you're going to be maybe connected to water, sewer, electric. You could be more in an off grid rural area where you need to do your catchment or a cesspool. So, what are some factors that might be hidden that somebody thinking about building, buying a lot, building would have to consider that's maybe a little bit different than on the mainland? Annie, what do you think?
Utility connection. So typically on the west side of Hawaii, we don't have catchment. We've got municipal water. So, so that's like an easy fix. But majority of the land here they're designated to have municipal water. There's only some areas where you're going to have to put a catchment, and that's going to be an added cost. And then as far as for utility, for electricity, if you were purchasing land and the utility pole was about 250 yards away, that's going to cost you um, at least maybe ten to $15,000 for every 50 feet if you wanted an electricity. So you may want to consider going off grid in that aspect. So, for other means, and that would be great, because with being off grid, right, Rachel, that can save you a lot of money for the utility.
Mhm.
And then also a great concern, and this has been like a super eye opener. I've been seeing a lot of people, because in the rule is in 2050, we have to convert from cesspool to septic. And the only two islands that have that is Kauai and the Big Island. And so I've been noticing a lot of people have been converting their cesspool from septic. And I always thought, oh, that's a long way. But we're at 2026. It's not too far. So and I did a little bit of research, and then what I'm finding is there's a few companies right now that are gearing to go towards helping people convert their cesspool from septic. I have a cesspool, and I actually went out to get a quote for it, and I received quotes from like 20,000 to 30,000 to
Mhm.
convert. And I had done it 10 years ago, and it was like $10,000.
Mhm.
Because
Wow.
I wanted to add a ohana and which I did add my ohana, but I didn't convert my cesspool to septic tank. So, and again, guess who we're working with? All the grading people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen? You're going to go back to your wastewater engineer, and there's some really great wastewater engineers, and they may move your cesspool and put that septic somewhere else. Then you're going to have to bring in fill. You're going to have to bring in a bulldozer, and they dig really, really deep. So, I encourage anyone that's having to convert, and adding that as you build, just consider what you're going to do. But if you're building now, they require you have septic. They're not requiring cesspool. In certain circumstances, like you have huge acreage, they may make an exception. So that's something you have to research with the building department. But yeah, that's a hidden cost for sure that people don't think about.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think the catchment tank being a hidden cost as well, that you think, and same with electric and same with internet, that you think that when you buy a piece of land, you're automatically going to be able to attach to water, attach to wastewater, attach to your electric, attach to internet, but that might not be the case. There's definitely some areas in the eastern south part of the island where, depending on what road in an area you decide to buy and build, it might not have internet connection, or it might not have electricity poles ran to that lot. So that's definitely a hidden cost, where if you want electricity pulled to your lot, then you need to pay, what Annie was saying, like $15,000. So there's definitely hidden costs when it comes to the utilities that you need to take into account, because it's not black and white. There's definitely nuances depending on what side of the island, what areas you're looking to build. And last but not least, there's another thing here in Hawaii that I'll let Rachel here talk about. It's our Archaeological Inventory Survey, which is also known as AIS. So, Rachel, what is this?
Yes. So this is something that I learned about coming here. I was like, oh, this is different from the mainland. The Archaeological Inventory Survey is it's a study that they perform by a qualified archaeologist to check a property if it has historic Hawaiian sites, cultural resources, or burial areas before development can happen. And these surveys are often required for construction, subdivisions, grading permits, or projects involving state or county review under Hawaii's historic preservation laws. So the cost can range from a few $1,000s for smaller properties to a much higher, depending on the site, land terrain, and whether cultural sites are found. So yeah, this one's an interesting one. And as you can see, we have no it can vary so much, right? And I think it depends on the area. Some areas are mapped where you already know you're going to have to do this, where we know that historical sites and burial sites are prominent. So yeah, something to check in, make sure your realtor knows the site, or, how to get more information on this. But yeah, it's definitely a hidden one that you want to consider.
So, what's amazing, and I think, I don't know if people are watching The Chief of War. We love Jason Momoa.
We sure do.
So as you can see, if they watched it, a lot of the film was done on the Big Island, and Hawaiian history, and they love Hawaiian history. A lot of the wars were fought in the Big Island. And you have to remember that King Kamehameha, this was his island. And many, many battles. And you'll see a lot of the markers, historical markers. You'll see the King Kamehameha sign. So typically you see those. You also read about the battles. And a lot of the battles were fought right above Kailua Kona. And it's no surprise. I always hear stories that, there's lava tubes, and in those lava tubes, there's human remains, because Hawaiian history is that when you have a warrior or a chief, they're buried so no one can take their bones because their bones has their mana. So a lot of these historical wars, right above Keoho happened. And that's why you have an area called Hokulea where you see a lot of this orange stanchions, and those are archaeological sites. When they started to develop Hokulea, they were stopped because they didn't do the proper archaeological finding.
Mhm.
They were finding bones. And so I think it took like 2 to 5 years. That's how long the process was. And so when you're driving around that area, if people say, hey, what are all those orange stanchions or plastic fencing? That's what it is. It's encasing archaeological findings and sites. So, you have to be very cognizant. And again, have a realtor that's experienced, that understands the area, and know the significance of those place names, because the place
Mhm.
names and sites are important to historical findings of Hawaii. So yeah, definitely a big hidden cost. And but if you say, hey, have there been homes that's built with those? Absolutely. Ali'i Cove, they have and they just build right around them. And and people are allowed to go in and pay their respects and do a pule, a prayer, and also, give a tea leaf or a ho'okupo to those areas that are significant Hawaiian areas and that's what they're for. So it's very important.
Yeah, that's great, Annie. I appreciate that. So definitely a hidden cost, right? All things to consider. Now let's talk about, we talked about building. Now, what we kind of, backtracking a little bit is when here at Living in Hawaii Experts, we are real estate agents. So when we have our clients come to us and they are talking about wanting to build, we really go over the pros and cons with them. And the one thing we'll ask them is, why do you want to buy? And this often will lead into this, which is like when buying existing properties makes more sense. So in this case, what we always recommend is that if you need to move within 1 to 2 years, either you're having a calling that you need to relocate for family, retirement, a job, but maybe your timeline isn't as flexible to wait on the process of building, to wait on the permits, to, the waiting game of this, then it could be better for you to buy an existing property than to go through the process of building. Another thing is if existing homes are priced competitively. In many Hawaii markets, existing homes can be a better value than what the math would be if you went to build out a property. When you take into account the land and the finishings, the permits, the construction, running those numbers, it may make more sense to buy an existing home. And also, Annie can speak to this from her experience, but when you're managing from the mainland, if you are somebody that wants to purchase a property here, maybe you have a long term property manager, a short term property manager, but essentially you need some help in taking care of that property. Owning and managing is a full time job. But if it doesn't make sense for you to manage a construction project while you're thousands of miles away, take that into account. It is going to be like another full-time job for you. So, managing from the mainland can be definitely a challenge that you need to be mindful of, where if you don't want to do it, if you don't have time, then building an existing home could make sense. Annie, I know you have some experience with helping manage some properties. What do you have to say?
So typically, people have to understand, and I was tell them this because it's something that they forget, is when you purchase a second home in Hawaii, those homes in Hawaii are very valuable, and you need to properly maintain it along the way. It's like having a vehicle, and you've got to get that oil change done every 5,000 miles. So, same thing with the house. If you don't properly manage any kind of a wear and tear, and especially if you have a house in a rainy area, like typically you want to have the house painted every 7 years. I think maybe even five, depending on what the weather patterns are like. Um, because if you've got dry rot, you've waited too long, now you've got dry rot, now you're talking about replacing your eaves, your fascia, and painting. So something that could have cost you just $5,000 to have someone paint is going to cost you like 20,000. So
Mm-hmm.
so maintaining like properties, they don't understand even things like, I always say get a toilet flusher, like just hire that person to go in the house, turn everything on, make sure that there's no leaks, the shower's working fine, because all you need is just one incident of a gas or of either a water leak. Now you've got to change everything, right? Your tile,
Mm-hmm.
your flooring, your what have you not. So invest in that person that's going to manage your house, take care of your house, even if they go there once a month.
Mm-hmm.
It's really critical.
And
And then
it's so important too for during that construction process, right? Like no one's going to love and take care of your house like you. So if you're going through that construction process and something does go awry and you're not here, there's definitely going to be some challenges to that and dealing with it from afar. Rachel, what about you? Have you had some clients that maybe was building a house and they were trying to manage it from afar, like, or even maybe that they decided not to because of that challenge and just and did decide to just purchase instead?
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone in the middle of it that decided to back out, but most people are like they don't want to do it. It's easier just to buy with their particular circumstance. Other than that, they go through it and then they say they'll never do it again. So I've heard that comment a few times. It's a lot, especially if you're not used to it. I do have some contractors friends that do it all day long and they love it, right? But if it's for you, you don't know, like maybe just really think about, it's a big process. And I agree with Annie, having properties as a second home here or even building here, this climate is so hard on a home, and things rust, things deteriorate. Like you really have to consider all these factors. So we don't want to scare you, but we want to give you the real here. So do your research. If it's right for you, do it. If you have a vision, we'll support you. But sometimes just buying that home is the best fit too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think, Kelly, what happens is when you have a client, right, that you cannot find that perfect house and they're fussing about where the kitchen is, what it looks like, the floor is right, not right, the position of the house is, a particular buyer, you can tell right off the bat that, what, I think you should build. They've got that. I want to build because I cannot find the perfect house.
Mm-hmm.
And typically that person, they've built homes before and they understand and they want to, or you have a couple that can't agree on a house. And so now you're like, well, let's look at land, or they say, let's look at land. And then that's when you go through the process of why they want to build. And
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, a lot of people are that understand that process of building and they love to build, they do it. And it's not, I know that, there's a lot of like things that kind of, you know not want to build, but I'm a person that likes to build, and I love it. If I find the perfect lot and I make it work, then that can work for people who have that kind of mindset and
Mm-hmm.
don't mind managing and they love designing. They love to choose the different facets of building the house. Especially the kitchen, the countertops. I mean, they get into it, and those are the type of people that end up wanting to build. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So when buying existing makes sense versus building is if you can't find what you want to make something more custom. Definitely. Awesome. Well, this is great, ladies. Let's wrap it up here. So, some key takeaways, Annie, why don't you kick us off about checking the inventory first? And I know you kind of alluded to that, but I put in here that, you know, we hear this often, right, in real estate, is that you couldn't build that today for what it's selling for. We hear that all the time, right? Meaning that like the replacement costs and paying for today's material, labors, permits is higher than what the property's current marketplace is. So this often will make buying an already existing property cheaper, more affordable than building one from scratch. You guys have heard that before, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I think, and again, you need to take a look at the area that you want to purchase. And you can tell right off on the inventory how much things cost. And really that typically right now, like in Waikoloa Village, there's land for sale for $325. You can probably build something there for $900,000. So that takes you to a 1.2 million. And if you say what's brand new homes selling for, brand new homes are selling here for about like 1.3 to 1.5. So does building make sense? Yes. Building can make sense because right now we're at a different market. Homes are about 10% higher, and so you can get the lower price. But some of the lower price homes are older homes, and the person that wants a brand new home, that's one of the reasons why you would go that route. So yeah, I think you could do it.
Really great point, Annie. And then Rachel, talk to us like vetting contractors, checking out on the DCCA their credentials.
Yeah, you definitely want to check out your contractor. I would start by Googling them, going to Facebook, checking out what other people might say about them. But go to the DCCA, do a search on their contractor's license and make sure it's in good standing. And also, you just want to talk to them and see if your personality is going to match with their personality. Do they come to the job? That's something that we encounter a lot here. Sometimes people just don't show up. They're going to go beach. So you want to make sure you pick someone who is, responsible and reliable. So very important. Try to get a referral from someone who has worked for them is what I would definitely recommend.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to add, when I've done my research as well for general contractors, I asked them, could I take a look at some homes you've built?
Great.
And you kind of have to also understand that they have different workers. So they have sometimes like 2 different teams of framers. So some of the framers can be better than the other ones. So, and they're rolling, right? Because they have like 5 different homes that they're building. So they have different crews that are going to each houses that they're doing. So yeah, that's something that I always do. Then I can see their product, and I always like to know who their finishers are. The finishers are the ones that really make it, where their finishers, their graders, and their framers are 3 important team of a general contractor. So yeah, definitely do your homework.
Yeah, that's great. That's it. Do your homework. Talk to a professional before you buy. Contact us at Living in Hawaii. We are the experts. We are real estate agents. We can help you from anywhere from start A to Z and make sure that you're making the best decision for you and your family. And check us out, livinginhawaii.com. There's plenty of information there about building, about the different islands. You can also search property there as well that's already existing in these areas. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining. That was amazing and giving all of your knowledge.
Thank you
for having us.
Aloha.
All right. Thank you, guys. Click the links below and connect with us more. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Aloha.
Aloha.